build the grassroots movement to tackle plastic pollution. Suzette will talk to you about local groups and affiliates. I just want to put my thumb on the scale and urge you to form a local group of Beyond Plastics. But if you're working with an existing organization that wants to work on plastics, you can become an affiliate of Beyond Plastics. That's the way we make change, by bringing people together. It's one thing to be really well informed and one person showing up at meetings. It's a whole different dynamic when you form a group. And we have these very strict rules that it has to be three people or more. Because quite honestly, if you can't get two other people to work with you, you're not going to get much done. You're no fun. You're not going to have the impact that we need you to have. So I just really, really want to urge you to consider that. Quick history of Beyond Plastics. We were formed about 6 years ago because I felt that there was an unmet need. We had a lot of good information on plastics, but that wasn't getting out into the world. And it certainly was not being recognized by our elected officials. And I was invited to teach at Bennington College, so that's where Beyond Plastics is based. And we've grown. We're now about 14 or 15 staff. We all work remotely and are working really, really hard to tackle this issue. But I have to acknowledge that we are in a moment of history in history. I mean, I don't know about you, but every time I read the paper in the morning, it is a gut punch. And there are so many issues that demand our attention. And if you get spread out working on 10 or 15 different things, you're not going to have impact. So I hope that plastics is in your top three of issues that you're actively working on. Um, and maybe saving democracy. That would be a good second issue to work on. But we have a lot to do, and we know that the public is on our side. I had I had a great Friday evening last night. I went to see Bill McKibben speak in Troy at the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And if you want to learn about climate change, read one of Bill's 22 books, um, many of them on climate. And he talked about just the horrible assault on our environment and the promise of solar. He wrote a new book that I recommend called Here Comes the Sun. So we have two book recommendations for you. Our book, so subtly displayed on my screen, The Problem with Plastic, and then Bill McKibben's book, Here Comes the Sun. And one of the points that Bill made that really resonated with me is that solar is really taking off around the world, more in other countries than in the United States. But at this pace, it's going to take us 20 to 30 years to really launch solar. And that's just too long. And the same thing with plastic. We have alternatives, we have solutions, but we can't go at this snail's pace. We're turning our ocean into a watery landfill. We're making climate change worse by the production of plastics. We're deceiving the public about plastics recycling. People think you just toss all your plastics into a recycling bin, and you all know that that doesn't work for most plastics. We only have a 5 to 6% recycling rate. Most compelling, we are poisoning environmental justice communities in Louisiana, Texas, and Appalachia. And we're also damaging our own health. So moving beyond plastics is not just an altruistic, hippie thing to do. It protects your health and your kids' health and your grandchildren's health. So by doing this training, you're going to walk away with a fantastic pocket guide that we only give to special people like you. It's a pocket guide that is like a quick reference for everything you need to know on the different parts of the plastic issue. You've got the book. If you don't have it, get your library to order it so you can read it. And there's also a very compelling new movie out on Netflix called the toxic detox, the toxic, no, the plastic detox, the plastic detox. Raise your hand if you have watched that movie. Okay, just a couple. So this is one of your assignments. You want to watch this movie, and then you want to figure out how you can organize a community screening of this movie because it's a phenomenal education tool. It focuses on plastics and fertility. It features our modern day Rachel Carson, a scientist named Dr. Shauna Swan, who we love. And she counsels a number of couples that have unexplained fertility problems. And she does an intervention with each of the couples on reducing the use of plastics in their lives. And it's not a typical kind of low key, you know, tedious environmental documentary. It is really fast paced, and we're just so fortunate that we have that tool. If you go to the Beyond Plastics website, you will see a toolkit that gives you everything you need to host a community screening. How many of you, raise your hand if you've attended a Beyond Plastics webinar in the past? Great. We have one coming up in May, the people who made this movie that I mentioned. Raise your hand if you have gone to our website and used any of the resources. Great. The fact sheets are very popular. Raise your hand if you've made a donation to Beyond Plastics. Wonderful. We thank you for that. And we need more. Please consider going to our website and making a donation. You know, Earth Day is coming up, Mother's Day, Father's Day is coming up. You don't need more stuff. When your kids and grandkids ask you, what do you want as a gift? Just send them to our website. So you've done these things. You're here today. You are part of the group. You are our allies. You are our friends. And I just want to close with a quote from the feminist writer Adrienne Rich, which inspires me every day. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. That's all of you, although you do have extraordinary power, and you'll have more after you complete this training. So welcome, everyone, and buckle up. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to see that it really helps you in your future work, not just on plastics, but any kind of issue that you're involved in your community. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Judith.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see you.
I now have to work on getting my grades in.
Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. So we're going to pull up our presentation. A lot of the things that Judith just spoke about, we're going to be sharing with you throughout the training today. And we're going to make sure we're going to follow up with all kinds of really good materials that are very easy to access. So hang tight to the end. All right. So let's get started. All right. Can everybody see the slide deck and can see me moving it? Good. Okay, good. All right. So we want to welcome you all to building the foundation from local action to lasting change. This is a grassroots advocacy training by Beyond Plastics. And we really appreciate you being here, as I said earlier, especially because we know it's a holiday weekend. So thank you for that. And we're going to be together for 2 hours. So we'll be here till 3 p.m. Exploring the principles of grassroots organizing and how you can take meaningful action on plastic pollution in your community. So it's a lot about civics. It's a lot about centering ourselves in our local communities. So, and that's really just the beginning of where things begin. Some of you might be here today never having advocated in your community before. Some of you might have more experience and have been involved in county or state campaigns. But I think it's helpful for us to really get centered and think about home. And in order to continue to connect and to work with other advocates, and in this case from across the country, we're going to be inviting you to join our network, which is a place for ongoing learning and community building and creating a movement, which we hope that you'll all play a role in. There's many different ways that you can do this work. There's not only one way. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that later on when I introduce you to my colleague Suzette Munley, who's here. Hi, Suzette. Suzette is our National Community Engagement Director and one of the visionaries of the network, and we'll share with you how you can engage with us in the network later on. My name's Rebecca Martin. I am the Director of Community Partnerships and Training at Beyond Plastics. I'm originally from the state of Maine, but now I live in New York State. I live on the banks of the Hudson River in the city of Kingston, New York, where I've been here for more than 20, almost 25 years. Um, and I've organized at the grassroots level for most of that time. Um, in our community, working to build our relationships and pushing against environmental threats and creating lasting change from the ground up, and making changes in laws and in charters, etc. So it's a privilege for me to be able to share um, practical tools and strategies that work, whether you're new to organizing or you've been at it for a long time. All right, so beyond plastics. So we're here today in our mission. As Judith said, we launched in 2019 at Bennington College, and Beyond Plastics unites the expertise of environmental policy with the creativity and energy of grassroots advocacy. It's very unique in that way, in order to build a powerful movement and to end plastic pollution everywhere. All right, a little housekeeping, just so you know what to do now and what to expect later. This session is being recorded so that we can share it with you at a later date. And to help everyone to focus, we're going to turn off the chat for the bulk of today's session, in order to help us to focus. It's always good. We can't hear your phone, but it's good to throw it out the window or whatever. Hide it under the table so that you can be present with us. If any questions come up for you during the session, I like the practice of writing them down so that you can ask them later. There's going to be a really great question and answer period later on. If you're comfortable, we invite you to turn your camera on and pretend that you're sitting around my kitchen table, so we can see one another, especially when our presentation is turned off. And following the training, all of the materials that we're discussing today, including the recording, will be made available to you so that you can refer to them at any point in time to help you in your efforts. All right, so this is a moment when we're going to turn on the chat because we want to know who's in the room. And just to keep things simple, later on you can chat your questions, you can come off of speaker to speak your questions, but for now, please put your name, your municipality or local government, where you live. So I'm from the city of Kingston, New York. That sort of thing, your name, where you live, and what state you're in. And Suzette, do you mind rattling them off?
Yeah, I would love to. We have Frisco, Texas in the house, Somerville, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Paterson, New York, Watertown, Massachusetts, Los Angeles, California. Now they're going fast. Little Ferry, New Jersey, Silver Spring, Maryland, New York City, Newark, New Jersey, Santa Ana, California, Tustin, California, Fort Collins, Colorado, Orlando, Florida, Cranford, New Jersey, Chesterland, Ohio. I may have missed a few that
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I think it's a thanks, Suzette. And it's a good moment to take heed in terms of who's here, because you might want to connect with them at some point later on when you pursue work in your region. All right. I should also remind us that this training is designed for participants in the United States, where Beyond Plastics has extensive experience with policy change. People from other countries, we're very happy to have you. We welcome you, though we're unable to support your regulatory efforts only because we don't have that expertise, but we welcome you if you're here today. All right, so let's begin by identifying our goal, which is always a good thing to do, no matter what we're working on, because every community is different and every organizer has their own style of working. I'll be outlining some foundational organizing steps that can be relevant to all of us in our work as organizers in our communities. So, Beyond Plastics Grassroots Advocacy training aims to build the collective power that's needed to pass meaningful laws and to build a movement. Everyone has a vital role to play. It seems intimidating at first, but we need everyone. We need organizers, we need speakers, we need professionals with expertise, and advocates and bakers and barkers and babysitters. It truly takes a village, and every contribution is important to the cause. So I think I've covered everyone then, right? It's all of us. And so during this 2-hour training session, now we're well into it, we're going to be outlining some key organizing steps and to introduce you to the new Beyond Plastics Network, where we're going to ask that you consider joining us in order to continue and support your learning, and to hobnob with advocates from all over the country to learn about their strategies and advocacies in communities that are working to eliminate plastic pollution, just like you. And I want to give you a quick overview of the field you're entering into and where Beyond Plastic fits in. So right now, there's a growing conversation in society about plastics, and public opinion is shifting. There isn't anyone that's asking or voting for petrochemical, or rather for plastic single use, except for the petrochemical companies. And so there are many organizations working to end plastic pollution, each bringing their own unique approach. And Beyond Plastics is a part of this broad network, and is a member of the Global Break Free from Plastic Coalition. So when you join us at Beyond Plastics, you become a part of this movement. All right, so to understand, we're going to talk a little bit about where plastics began generally. We're going to get into some science, that we're going to connect to advocacy, and then we're going to get into some civics before we end and move into our network to talk a little more about that. So, to understand the plastic crisis that we're facing today, we need to go back and to where it all began and how disposable culture was promoted and how it has since shaped our world. One of the origins of single-use plastics can be traced to August 1955 to This Life magazine article called Throwaway Living, which is often cited as the first major public promotion of disposable culture. And here it is. Maybe some of you have it or have seen it. This is the most famous image from the article that shows a family tossing disposable items into the air. The article framed throwing things away not as wasteful, but as a sign of progress and modern convenience. It celebrated disposable products as a part of the golden age of modern life, highlighting how they saved time and effort. So this message came during a time when plastic production was ramping up, as wartime manufacturing was being redirected towards consumer goods. And now an estimated 33 billion pounds or 15 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean every year, as Judith was highlighting earlier. And as we all know, it's not slowing down. Production is expected to double by 2040 and triple by 2060. We also know that in the United States that only 5 to 6% of plastics are actually recycled in the US, those ones and twos, revealing that the industry's false promise of recycling as a real solution to plastic waste and pollution is nothing more than marketing. However, the trajectory isn't inevitable. It's why we're here. It's why we're working so hard on this. It's why we're all here today on a Saturday afternoon, to turn the tide on plastic pollution and to build a truly sustainable circular future, if we all act together and act together now. And that's why we're here. This is a crucial moment to get organized and to stay organized. And to remember in the midst of so much information and not knowing where to look, to me, the first place is inward. It's in our local communities, because big change often starts very small. And in my case, and in what I see and talk about all of the time, right in our own local communities, our local officials who are making decisions on a monthly basis, that are impacting our lives directly are our neighbors. They're accountable to you, to me, to us. And so it makes community level action one of the most powerful ways to create change. So I want to share a powerful example of this very thing. Once we walk through a little bit of the science of plastics, and ground ourselves in the science, or what's factual, because it's very, very important to the work that we need to do, or good information, factual information. And then if you've ever wondered whether local action really matters, this will be our case study for April to walk you through and to be inspired by. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about microplastics and nanoplastics and move into chemicals. So it's not easy, but it's important. And then we're going to get into the good stuff. All right. So thanks for bearing with me as we do that. And we'll start with microplastics. So you often hear that plastics never fully disappear. And instead of breaking down like food or paper, plastic just breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces. And these tiny fragments are called microplastics. So you can see in here some microplastics are intentionally made, like nurdles, the tiny beads that are used in all kinds of plastic materials and scrubs and toothpaste, though I think those might have been banned, but that gives you a sense of their trajectory. But most come from larger plastic items like bags or bottles that slowly break down over time. And this happens when they're exposed to sunlight, heat, and friction. So in the ocean is the perfect place for larger pieces of plastics to continually break up, and become smaller and smaller and smaller. And you might also hear the word nanoplastics. Nanoplastics are just simply the smallest end of the spectrum, covering any plastic particles in the nanoscale range. So they can be as small as a virus or a speck of dust. So because they're so small, they can travel through air and water and soil and our food, and that means that we're breathing them in, we're drinking them, we're even eating them. Um, Scientists have found microplastics in some of the most remote areas of the world on planet Earth that include on the top of Mount Everest to the deepest parts of the ocean and the Mariana Trench. Microplastics can also reside in our human body, in the human body. On the list of organ systems where scientists have found microplastics, unfortunately, continue to grow. And this diagram here shows us just how many parts of the body that microplastics have been found in. Everything from the brain to our blood, to our heart and lungs and kidneys. They've also been detected in the placenta and breast milk, which shows just how early babies may be exposed. And while there's a lot of science coming out on microplastics, this still is a really new area of research. Um, we don't yet have clear proof that microplastics directly cause disease, but most of what we know is correlational, not causal. However, the evidence that has been found so far is alarming scientists and all of us, and is prompting people to speak up about microplastics as a major public health concern. So one of the reasons why microplastics is so concerning is that they're small enough to slip past the body's natural defenses. So they can move into organs, and the tiniest ones have been even found inside of human cells. So in general, we can think of microplastics as causing harm in two major ways. So the first is their physical presence, the microplastic shards that can puncture and tear cells and tissue. And because they're foreign objects, they can trigger the immune system, um, uh, and you get inflammation. And unlike bacteria or viruses, our bodies can't break them down. So the immune system just stays activated. And this leads to chronic inflammation. The second major concern is toxic chemical exposure. Microplastics act as carriers for various toxic chemicals. So plastics, and we'll talk about this in a bit. I'm going to reiterate this, are made of, more than 14,000 synthetic chemicals, 16,000 chemicals. Sorry, PFAS are more than 14,000 chemicals that are in plastics. And so microplastics will act as a carrier for these various toxic chemicals. It's part of the plastic manufacturing. They stick to the plastics as it travels through polluted environments. And once they're in our bodies, these chemicals can leach out and cause their own sort of damage. All right, so these days we're hearing a lot about PFAS chemicals or forever chemicals, and that's referring to PFAS, and which is, as I said, it's a massive group of chemicals of more than 14,000 synthetic chemicals that are commonly added to materials, including plastic, that give them their color, that allow them to be non-stick, to be waterproof, stain resistant, to be grease proof. And this is a good diagram here showing some of the common items that we're purchasing where PFAS exists. And what makes PFAS so persistent is their carbon-fluorine bond, which is one of the strongest bonds in chemistry. And because of this, PFAS doesn't break down, not in the environment, not in our bodies, and that's why it's referred to as forever chemicals. PFAS exposure has been linked to a wide range of health issues, and many scientists and health experts are now calling for urgent action to reduce or eliminate the use of PFAS. However, it's taken widespread harm to reach this point. So in the United States, chemical regulation often places the burden of proof on those who are harmed rather than the companies who are producing the chemicals, which is something that I think a lot of us don't understand. So companies are making chemicals on a regular basis that are not tested before they're introduced into the products that we purchase and that we use and are exposed to and that we throw into our garbage cans that are then trucked to landfills, sometimes hundreds of miles away, and that are causing deep harm to communities that are living by those landfills. The precautionary principle is a great thing to be aware of because it offers a better safe than sorry approach and requires industry to prove that the chemicals are safe before they introduce them into their products. And that prioritizes health and our environment and our communities over profit. So adopting this principle nationally would likely require action by Congress. So that's right now a bit of a daunting task. However, communities and states are taking meaningful action and introducing campaigns such as this one that restrict that I should back up and say that are requiring procurement policies that restrict hazardous cleaning products and chemicals to make safer purchasing choices for public buildings and schools and workplaces. So there are ways locally that we can move the needle to press for something like the precautionary approach across the United States. A lot to unpack there, but it's good to keep that in mind. All right, so every quarter we highlight a case study of communities that are doing incredible work to show you that local advocacy works. And in this case today, we're going to talk a little bit about the community of Hoosick Falls, New York, that dealt with PFOA, which is a type of PFAS chemical, synthetic chemical, that contaminated the municipal water supply due to a local industry that was using PFAS chemicals and disposing them into their local drinking water supply. And so the community had to take matters into their own hands and did a lot of testing of their wells, their private wells, and as well as the village supply. And these tests revealed dangerously high levels of PFOA. So the Hoosick Falls community had to push the state to take action, and they did that through their testing and the results of those tests, which led to New York State establishing a drinking water quality council, which advised the state mandated 10 parts per trillion. You'll see that PPT is the acronym, and being the standard for PFAS in water. And specifically PFOA and PFOS, so which ended up at the time being one of the most protective standards across the nation. The Department of Health also formally recognized the need for consistent federal standards, and the Department of Health is responsible for our drinking water and the safety of our drinking water. In this case, their efforts led to the Environmental Protection Agency to set a new national drinking water standard, limiting two of the most notorious forever chemicals, PFOA and PFOS, to be just four parts per trillion. PPT. So that's the lowest level that's reliably measured. So while the contamination forced the community to act, their efforts show how grassroots organizing can drive systemic change. And I'll bring this to myself. So my personal journey in community organizing began decades ago with a local neighborhood issue that brought my neighbors and myself together, me together through regular meetings, which we'll talk about. And through these regular meetings in person, before there was actually Facebook, um, in the around the early 2000s, we built trust. We had regular communication, and we had a shared purpose to work and to protect our community, all of which proved invaluable when a national water bottling company came and attempted to purchase 1.75 million gallons of our municipal drinking water. And so, because together we understood where to go within local government to get our concerns on the table and identify the local legislative opportunities, we were able to mobilize very quickly and stop the sale of our drinking water within 5 months. And this has shaped the path that I'm on today. And as I continue as a professional in this field, I also continue to work as a volunteer in my community with Kingston Citizens. And I invite you, if you'd like, to take a peek at it at kingstoncitizens.org, where we've done more than 20 years of work, local advocacy work. And you can see what our neighbors have achieved. And the work has inspired others in communities nearby with these other groups that have sprouted up because of our local work. And it's exactly what Beyond Plastics is doing now or have been doing with its network. It's just on a national level. And we'll describe that a little later on. So that's a lot. I'm talking an awful lot, and I appreciate your listening. And I'm going slowly to try to make it, we process at different speeds. Is the speed good? Is it too fast? Are you okay? Give me hands. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. So now I want to get into civics, and I want to start talking about it in the way of the commons, and to help us to ground ourselves in our sense of place and our role in community organizing or in civics, in advocacy, which is education, by reflecting on the commons and our responsibility to protect them. So if you haven't heard of the commons before, the commons is our shared resources. So they're what we all depend on, things like clean air, clean water, public spaces, our lands, our community health, the environment. These resources, which is a tricky term, because they're not just for us, right? We say resources and it sounds like all of these things are made for humans, but they're not, right? It's for all, for everything. We're an animal and we're part of the environment. So I'll just qualify that term a little bit. Sometimes we use terms that everyone understands first, but I do think it's important to be thoughtful about the words that we use. So with that said, these are the kinds of things that we've been nurturing and protecting through generations of collective effort and care. And so they require ongoing stewardship to ensure that they remain healthy and accessible for everyone and everything. And so caring for the commons is our civic responsibility as community members. And we have to protect what sustains us and make sure that that the things that we love and need in order to survive are accessible to all, as I've said, and healthy for the generations to come of all things. And so for a democracy to thrive, good government requires laws and policies, whether they exist or they're being updated. They're newly created that protect the most vulnerable, and uphold equality, justice, and fairness. When we cover that base there, everyone is protected. So that's the ground up principle. And without these protections, you can be sure there's nothing to prevent harm and exploitation, and we can certainly be sure that that will occur. The threat to the commons. So some of the threats to our commons, they include neglect and underinvestment in our public resources like water, schools, and transit. And it leads to deteriorating or the deterioration of our infrastructure, which we all are seeing in our communities now. So when the commons are degraded or sold off, because typically they'll be privatized, which is what I described with our drinking water. Heading back to that, the sale of our drinking water had everything to do with money to pay for aging infrastructure, which is not the way, to fix those things. We're in favor of planning and in investing over time. And so when the commons are degraded, certainly marginalized communities are going to suffer first and the most. And when our public systems erode, civic engagement will decline and environmental harm will increase. And as I mentioned, privatization occurs when local governments can't afford to maintain our infrastructure, which then shifts the control to private interests that are focused on profit rather than the common good. Outdated policies and laws. So when that occurs, they leave regulatory gaps, loopholes that are exploited, and that weakens protections. And then, of course, we have climate change and pollution that threaten ecosystems and that lead to resource loss and displacement, and harm. And again, especially to vulnerable communities who are facing the greatest risks. All right, so all of that's important. I know it's a lot, but we're here together. And FYI, and going to get into more of this in a bit, Suzette and I are here working and building systems to support you, to come forward. This is work that we can all do together, even if we're not nearby. There's a lot of support and people who are passionate about this, and especially in the collaborative process in building our community here, and building the movement across the country. I just want to say all that because I know that this is a lot, but I appreciate you listening through here with me. Because the good news is that we can reclaim and protect our commons, right? And we can do this by understanding what the options are. And one of those options is community-led governance, which are decisions about shared resources that are made by the people who are directly impacted by those decisions. So in your community, that's going to be all of you. And in some communities, cities like mine, there are definitely more vulnerable areas that we need to be very aware of and reach out to and get to know. Policies and legislation that can reverse harmful practices and establish systems for public funding is something that we can completely work towards creating or reforming in our communities. Education and awareness that inspire civics and civic responsibility that drive grassroots movements like those that I've shared with you today. And instead of a corporate top-down approach, a patriarchal approach where decisions are made by a few, the community takes the lead in planning and managing and caring for resources that they share. And this is the 30,000-foot view. So we all want to help solve plastic pollution. Um, how can then local organizing make a real impact in what is a seemingly insurmountable crisis? The essential steps of local organizing. All right, this is how. And so we're going to break down and just walk through the steps in how we approach this work in our communities. And we've created a campaign guide that that just states what I'm going to walk you through. So if you're visual, you can look at it while I'm speaking. This is yours. It's a living document, and we add resources in here to help you in the ways to get started, if that's helpful, or just ways to improve maybe your system of organizing if you're currently organizing now. Okay, so first, let's talk a little bit about Beyond Plastic's theory of change, which shows us why passing laws is the most effective way to end plastic pollution. And so change often starts with individual actions, like a reusable mug, for example, or reducing waste at home. And all of these steps are important. They build awareness and they build momentum, and they can show your personal commitment that inspires others around you to do the same. However, to create lasting impact, individual efforts must grow into collective action. And that's where advocacy comes in. And advocacy is education. We're going to be clear about what that term means today. So over time, we see that real enduring progress depends on systemic solutions and policies and laws that make sustainable choices the norm. And that's why Beyond Plastics focuses in on policy level actions, such as banning single-use plastics or requiring reusable dishware in public programs. It's individual action or change that sparks the movement, and it's systemic change that sustains it. So where to begin? Again, basic stuff, but it's good to think through it. We start by building a core team and of 2 to 4 committed people in your neighborhood. And you'll learn about your neighbor's skill sets. You'll assign clear roles such as outreach, social media, meeting coordination to make the team effective from the start. And what's also really important is setting a consistent schedule. So you want to meet regularly with the people that you're maybe just getting to know. Maybe you've known them for a while, but you want to get to know on a regular basis the people around the table based on the work of civics and advocacy that you're going to participate in. And you want to organize with people, not just for them. And so it's important to know your community and mapping the key neighborhoods and groups that exist within your community. You want to try to think about building your team as a diverse team, and you want to ensure that the most impacted in your communities are at the table helping you to lead the work. And as you know by now, I like to think about the words that we use and to make sure that everybody understands. We throw a lot of terms around. This is important with people that you're working with to make sure everybody is understanding the terminology. So we begin with what is a campaign? So a campaign is an organized effort to achieve a specific goal, right? Like passing a law or raising awareness. And it involves planning and coordinating actions or tactics, which we'll talk about in a bit, and engaging people to build support and influence decision makers. And asking what is the goal, which is our first question, helps us. It helps us to work clearly and to work clearly with others. So key questions such as, What do we want to change? Who can make the change? What support do we need? So for this exercise, our goal is to form or support a group to pass local laws or policies addressing plastics. So your campaign and your goal, your campaign goal can help you to determine if there's already a group working on the issue that you care about. And in this case, this is our Beyond Plastics local group map, and you can see all the groups that are working across the nation to eliminate single-use plastics. And so if there is a group that's nearby, that's great. You can join their efforts. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. If there isn't anyone nearby and you're ready for that, it's a great time to take the next steps to start organizing to build the local movement. And as you plan, let environmental justice guide your work. You want to seek input from those directly impacted in your communities before taking action, and ensure that your efforts are protective to vulnerable communities. Um, you know, there's a lot going on in your communities that creates the circumstance where all of you are vulnerable. But in plastics, we have to take a step back and see that our work is not only to protect us in our communities and our states, but certainly where communities are living next to these facilities, these chemical companies, these cracker facilities that are just growing and expanding out and encroaching on people's homes and their communities and poisoning them for generations. And that's what we keep in mind when we think about plastics in our work nationwide. Um, all right, I'm going to jump back into civics for a second. Something you may all know, maybe you don't. It's good to refresh our understanding, to look at how laws are passed and policies are made, and interpreted. So to do this, we'll review the three branches of government. We've got our legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. And we're going to start with the legislative here. The legislative branch are the ones responsible for writing laws, and they include our federal, state, and county and local. We have Congress and our senates, our assemblies. If you have a county like we do in New York State, their legislators or commissions. And in our local communities, you may have a council, you may have a board, you may have trustees. And at every level, there's an executive branch, with the exception of the town level and the local, where the supervisor and the board members all serve together. But for the most part, there's an executive branch, there's the president, there's the state governor, there are the county executives, and on our local level, mayors and supervisors. Mayors are separate branches of government, typically. Supervisors serve with their boards, typically. The judicial branch, so these are our courts, and they're responsible for interpreting the laws that are written by the legislative branch. And FYI, the executive branch does not draft laws. There's a lot to discuss these days. They can do executive orders, but it's really the legislative branch that we want to focus on today when we're thinking about lawmaking. And the judicial branch really matters because they're interpreting these laws. And in the case of local suits and what have you, this becomes very, very important on the local level, state and federal as well. But understanding this matters because we need to know who has the power to pass or to influence or to pass laws and policies that we're working on. And to do that, we need to understand who these folks are, what's important to them, and how we can wield influence over their decision making that helps us to tailor our messages as we go along. That said, in a democracy, and this is my community here, packing the council chambers on a regular basis, we play the biggest role. We vote, we advocate, we educate, we participate on boards and committees and commissions, and we provide input. We can hold elected officials accountable. And so communities that organize and advocate effectively will, without a doubt, shape the local and state decisions that are being made. And that includes on reducing plastic pollution. I like to think of civics as a friendship. It takes ongoing care. So you don't have to do what I do every day, but getting to know your elected officials, looking to find your website, um, and to see, to really get acquainted with the tools that you have in your local community, is how that we can start our work to protect our democracy and the norms that are currently not in great shape. And so this is how we repair those things. So it does require, though, active participation in order for them to remain healthy. So choosing a model bill. All of this is a good segue into to get back into the heart of what we're talking about today in organizing locally to drive change is what bill or ordinance or policy does your group want to address? Or what is being addressed in your area, and how can you support the work of the advocates working hard to get those policies or laws through? You want to look for model bills. Often they exist. And in this case, with plastics, we have lots and lots of resources, all of which you can find in your campaign guide that we shared with you earlier. And to pass a model bill, which can sometimes feel really daunting, but they're just steps in a process, right? You don't have to look to the end. You start where you are, right? And so once you choose your model bill, you want to look for a sponsor, somebody who is a legislator who can carry that bill, a council member, a board member. You want to connect with them, and they'll want to introduce it and support it throughout its life with their colleagues. You want to collaborate with your sponsor. The likelihood is that you're going to want to adapt it to suit your municipality, and you're going to want to get input not just from your group, but from the community. You're going to want to grow and build a coalition of partners in order to rally more support from the community. When you partner with different groups, they have their own constituencies or members that they can then share what you're working on to their members of their groups. And that's how you expand out and bring people in. You want to have a clear strategy and follow through and stay flexible and responsible or responsive as things change and evolve. So every local law or policy has a process that it follows from beginning to end. And so understanding, well, what is a local law process? And what is the public piece where that we can count on to plan around, to bring people out, to be able to communicate their support at those critical times. It's a puzzle. It's fun. And it's civics. So we want to also stick together. And because there's a process, that's something that's your frame. What happens in between those steps can change. The people change, the circumstances can change, politics can come into play. And so you got to be nimble with your strategy. It's good to be flexible within your frame. And you want to work closely with your sponsor. The ideal is always an elected official with the public and organizations. That's a great synergy. And that is our goal, is to work together to make our elected officials successful at what they do before becoming a watchdog like me. You don't always have to be a watchdog. We want to encourage everyone's success. in our local communities first. That's our goal, right? So some of you here today might live in what's known as a preemption state. And these limit local governments from passing their own rules, and in this case, on single-use plastics. So we're not going to go into all of the details today, though it's a great deep dive conversation that probably Suzette is planning to have within the network. Maybe we have had it, we'll have it again. But we want you to be aware that these laws can affect your strategy. So if your state does have one of these laws, don't be discouraged because there's lots of ways to do this work. And education, advocacy is such a big part of our work, whether you live in a preemption state or not. So you can really put your emphasis on education. You can shift public opinion by doing that work. You can run non-legislative campaigns like promoting reusables in schools or community programs, Meals on Wheels, you know. And although long and challenging, you can also dig in and someday work to repeal that preemption. And you should look and see if you live in a state with a preemption law, there might be people working on it already that you can learn from and join. So I mentioned earlier that every legislative, every law or policy is a process. So it's really important to understand and to map out the pathway to success by identifying the legal process that's required to pass your bill and to build support at every step of the way, one step at a time. These are the building blocks towards passing a law. And it's so invigorating as you're doing this work and when you get to the end. And it's really something everybody can do. And it's meant to be that way for all of us to participate in. Power mapping. I'm sharing a slide from our recent conference because this was a great exercise. Because power mapping is a critical step that is often overlooked. And this process, this is just one way, and we can talk about it more in the network. But it helps us to take a step back and to look around at our communities to identify the network of influence around any issue, really. And it gives us a chance to ask questions like, who makes the decisions? Who influences that person? You can find out that there might be influences that you'd never have thought of before without really doing these exercises to think this through. Who are the allies? Who are the opponents? Who are the neutral parties? And how much influence does each of them have? So to understand this network will help you to build out your strategy. There'll be more ways than one for you to, I like to call it the arms of the octopus. There's lots of ways to do this work, and this will really help you to build the support that you need when it matters the most. So building timelines, I think it's important whether you handwrite them or you have a project management tool. We've given you a little Google Doc link if you want to see another example in your campaign guide to just map it out. So if you're going to pass a local law, what are the steps to do that? You know, it's going to be introduced into committee for discussion. It's going to go to a public hearing. It's going to go out to the floor for a vote. So just knowing what those steps are and planning around them and the timeline to write it down somehow so everybody can see, which gives us all a chance to collaborate towards the best strategies, can be very helpful. Facts matter. Talking points are really important. And identifying 2 to 3 key messages that you want people to remember to take to as you go out into the community and to share that information wherever you go. And so what's great is Beyond Plastics has created more fact sheets than you can even imagine. If you haven't seen them yet, we've linked them in the campaign guide. Um, and these fact sheets actually complement the model bills that we've created as well. You've got everything that you need to get started on plastics in your community here. Tactics. So, what are they? So, tactics are the specific actions that you're going to take to achieve your campaign goals. So, there's dozens of them. And, they include petitions and they include constituent meetings, so meetings with your decision makers, letters to the editor, any sort of activity out in the community could be a tactic. And learning these tactics take time, and you don't have to use them all at once. And that's why we don't really go into them in detail here, but just to make you aware of them and to know that you can continue to learn. Um, you can learn about tactics through our network, Beyond Plastics Network, so that wherever you are in this work, we're meeting you wherever you are. And so I don't want you to get overwhelmed by the things that you can do and chip away at your success along the way. The key is to create sustainable advocacy, and we want to build skills gradually, and from the ground up. So I've talked a little bit about coalition partners earlier. To me, this is the most rewarding part of the work because it allows us to connect with people and groups that we might not necessarily have come into contact with. And this is part of your power mapping too, in identifying those groups, cultural assets. Sometimes they're known as who's working in your community or your region on the things that matter to you. And by bringing these coalition partners together, you're suddenly opening up a whole world of expertise that you might need. Lawyers, engineers, um, writers, you name it. Uh, we're able to, we may not have the resources to pay for those things. And so building coalition of partners creates the opportunity to share resources in order to make uh, uh, lasting impacts in our work. And so, of course, there will always be opposition and challenges. It's obvious, but I feel like it's good to lay this on the table, um, because whether it's industry pushback or it's political resistance in your community or out in the world, the slow pace of things um, to make change or obstacles internally that you might have with your own team as part of the process. These are opportunities for us that often lead to our most creative, impactful, and out of the box solutions. And challenges for humility. Why are we doing this work? Right? And to try to remember that and hold that as we go forward because it's difficult and we're volunteers. And we have to keep all of that in mind as we move forward with the folks we work with and to move forward with kindness, which we're going to talk about now, because it's a long game and we need to find ways to keep going together. And we learn this the hard way sometimes, right? But we need to listen to one another and move forward together in order to grow support. And that requires patience. And we need to regularly discuss what's working, what's not, and why in a way that isn't personal, in a way that's productive, constructive, right? Democracy thrives with dissent and debate. These are things that we have to get better at. There are actually exercises that you can use with people and try out, apples and onions, and where you can give a little bit of constructive or positive and then constructive feedback and get used to that. That's really important. Constructive criticism, or however we want to frame it. That sounds a little, I don't know what else, but I need to keep moving, but you get my gist here. We need to be kind and we need to do this work with mutual respect and address the problems as best as you can as they arise, and not to allow them to fester or to grow within your team, um, to form contempt, which is very difficult to break down, as we know, as that builds. So acknowledging feelings and emotions around an anger, around the kinds of things that we see and that are unjust, and grieve when we need to. You know, the grieving piece is what slows us down and deepens our empathy. It's really important that we do that. And it helps us to organize with purpose rather than from adrenalized rage, which will only compound the harm. And that is something that you can see out in our world right now that is encouraged. And it is radical, although it's very human and simple, to slow down and to be mindful of what you're feeling and what brings you, honestly, the greatest boundary that there is right now is inner peace, and what brings that and what does not. That doesn't mean you're not fierce in your work, right? You got to protect your magic. You got to pace yourself and you got to set boundaries. You want to avoid burnout or losing focus on your goal, which you've set, which is great because you can keep coming back to that and that will keep you on track. So the work's not a marathon, rather, it is a marathon, not a sprint, as they say. So you got to take care of your people, and stay in it for the long haul. And always remember that it's we, not me. All right, so that was a lot, and I really appreciate you listening. And I hope that talking through these things is helpful for today. And in our next hour, which is more like 30 minutes or so, because we want to leave time for communication here, um, we'll be joined by Suzette, who's actually here, and who is going to talk us through the Beyond Plastics Network, which is, this is the pathway into the network where you can work with me and Suzette and our staff and advocates from all across the nation on a regular. Our meetings are monthly, they're remote, so you can come wherever you are, and we'll be digging into more of these topics one at a time, so that you can develop your skills over time, as we mentioned, get the support that you need to succeed on your change maker journey. All right, so we know that the plastic industry has promoted recycling as the solution to the plastic crisis. Um, Much like the bottled water industry has promoted the perception that tap water is unsafe and that you need to drink from a bottle on a regular. But the reality is clear, and that's that we can't recycle our way out of uh, where we are now. And in order to succeed, we're going to have to, in our lives, eliminate single-use plastics immediately. We need to stop buying the stuff. We got to cut it off at the source, and the flow of plastic pollution in our daily routines. This is a big deal to be able to do that and look at it. That's why the film, The Plastic Detox, is so important to watch. And I hope you might watch it over the weekend. It's actually inspiring, an inspiring film. I'm glad they did it that way. There's a lot you can do. Um, so beyond that, as I stated, that we can organize to also pass laws, because that's what's going to promote real change, through policies and laws. And we need to build a movement and organize in order to pass those laws. So together, we want to build that momentum and unite our communities one by one individual at a time, to stop the plastic pollution crises. And with that, Great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Amen to that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. I'm going to have a sip of water. Kathy, thank you. That's a lot. I'm so glad to be here, though. It's fun to share advocacy and to be a witness to it really being effective. Cheers to you. I think what we'll do is take a couple of questions. Um, if you have them, or you can take a quick break, you can stand up, you can get some water. But we're gonna take some questions for a bit before Suzette comes on, just to kind of lead us to the network. So with that, maybe raise your hand, whether you use the feature that you can access down below. You'll see in the React, there's a little heart. If you click on React, there's a little raise hand function that you can click on, or you can just raise your hand. Yeah, Joyce. Yep, you're muted.
Hi. Yeah, I was looking for the hand. I couldn't find it. Anyway, in the beginning, one of the first slides you had shown us was about the 1955 Life magazine, and then you said that we have 33 billion plastics, right? An estimated pounds, 15 million metric tons.
Mhm.
Where did those statistics come from?
For the estimate that we have today.
Right, because if I use that to form a group or to get people interested, I want to, if somebody asks me where did I get those statistics from,
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, well, this is the resource.
So what I would say right now is that do you have Beyond Plastic's book by chance?
Yes, I do.
Good. Have you read it?
I haven't read it cover to cover.
Cover to cover. So that's going to be, the book was written, and Suzette might have more to say about that. The book was written specifically for that reason. We want you to have the most up-to-date information, and this book will provide that as well as citations in the book to help you. And it's meant to be something that you bring with you wherever you go. You'll get the answers to those questions. I don't have the citation at my fingertips, but that is one place where you can get that info. The other thing that Judith introduced today that I guess we're now going to be sharing with all, which I'm glad, is our plastics, our guide to plastics, which has more than a dozen topics with all the key points and the studies. It does all the work for you, and it's a living document. I don't know, Suzette, maybe you can even pull that up and share it now. It's
My-
incredible. And it's a living document, meaning, and our staff scientist put this together or at least led the effort with our staff. And we're going to update that, I don't know how regularly, if it's quarterly or, biannually, that allows, so you can go to it and you can know that whatever is there is absolutely the most current information. So Joyce, I hope that helps you.
Yes, it does. And the other part of that question is, will you give us access to this slides
Yeah.
to go over information? Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
I'm going to follow up with an FAQ, the presentation slides as a PDF, the video, the
Got it.
campaign guide, and even a compendum so that marks where I spoke and the slides so you can refer to it quickly. Anything we can do to make it easy for you. And of course, we are here, and all the citations are listed in the pocket guide. I mean, it's really, we're coming out swinging this year.
Okay.
So thank you, thank you. And you know what? I didn't see who was next, so I apologized. Daniel, I'll just take you. Yep.
Sure. Hey, I work as a material scientist for a nylon circularity company, and
Uh,
like those tons is really the range. Like we get like 1,000 tons from Ghana's fishing fleet alone per year in wasted nets. So it's really millions of tons.
Yeah. And I mean, everything, everything for the most part is either being landfilled or incinerated or shipped overseas. I mean, that's what we're looking at and why a big part of this, and I know that people, it's hard for all of us, is we've got to stop. We've got to really think about what we're consuming. This is like step one. And whether it's really necessary or not, or planning, I have to go grocery shopping. What do I need in order to get the things that I need today to avoid plastic bags, uh, clamshells, whatever? And it's not easy, but that sort of thinking is something we can all do immediately. Thank you, Daniel. And I see, um, uh, is it Kathleen? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I have ordered, I've put your book on hold from the library. It's been on hold in process for several months now, so I'm hoping I finally get it.
It's
And
on hold still? Do you know when you ordered it?
well, I didn't order it. I get my books from the library
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
put a
Yeah,
hold on it,
I see.
and it's not yet in, apparently,
Where are you located?
in Arvada, Colorado.
Hmm. We need.
So my second
Mhm.
comment is I've done a couple of education sessions with various groups on plastic and covered much of the material that you did, and then talk individually with people as well as I'm doing other social things. And one of the comments that somebody made back to me was, well, plastic makes us safer from germs. I'm not going to stop getting my food in plastic.
Mhm.
And and I'm wondering if you have a source for countering those kinds of comments. And I didn't respond um, because I know there are ways to do that. But is there a sort of one place where you can get responses to people that are um, not convinced that plastic is a problem?
Yeah, so Suzette just shared a fact sheet that you can pull up that Suzette, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a fact sheet about recycled plastic and food and beverage packaging. So I don't want to bombard everybody with a ton of fact sheets, but I'm going to put the link in the chat to the page on our website where there's tons of fact sheets that you could kind of look through and parse which ones are most meaningful for you in your presentations or the questions that you're getting right now. So I'm going to pop that in right now. This is our website page. And then Kathleen, if you have specific questions that you don't see addressed there, you can also reach out to me or Rebecca. I'm going to put my email in the chat as well. You can reach out to us and we can help direct you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Suzette. That's a great idea. A great way to share is just give the page number on the website. You're right. That's so thoughtful. I would also say to purchasing our book, any independent bookstore, I mean, I would go that route first, whether it's online or at your local bookstore. I'm trying to look. Thanks for that question. The New Press is who published our book. You can order it there. That's a 501(c)(3). It's not for profit bookseller, publisher. There's also others that we can share with you. These are political choices that you can make, but I'll speak for myself. I avoid Amazon um, uh, pretty much 100%. So, but that is your choice. But that's what I would say. Thanks for asking. One more question, and then we're going to go to Suzette, and we can do more at the end. And I, Victoria?
Yeah, hi. So I actually have a quick answer for Joyce because I've been doing a lot of research for this in school. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has a 2022 plastics outlook report that's available online. Also, Jenna Jambeck at the University of Georgia has a lot of research on plastics flowing into the ocean. But my question is, how do you counter the people who say that plastic benefits us? Like, it makes cars lighter, it makes shipping all of these products lighter, it preserves food for longer. So, like, what do you say in response to that?
Well, I have an opinion. Suzette, what's yours?
I would say what I typically talk to people about is our mission isn't to say there's never going to be anything made of plastic anymore. We are focused on single-use plastics, which is 45% of the plastics that are made, which basically are in your hands like less than 2 minutes. So they're the things that are being packaged. Like, who needs their bananas wrapped in plastic or avocados wrapped in plastic? We just don't need those things. Judith likes to say pointless plastic, we didn't ask for it, it's just showing up. So we're really focused on the items that there really isn't a need for, and kind of recognizing that there are some uses that are important and necessary, and that's not what our work is about.
Yeah, thank you, Suzette. Victoria, too, I think it depends. Like, if you are speaking to whom, if the audience that you're going out in front of that's challenging you is your town board or your council member, the message, that's a global general message, right? Nobody voted for more plastics, right? They're just the petrochemical company is making these things. We're not voting for those things. So, whether it's a garden club as your audience, or it's your council as the audience, or it's high school students who are your audience, by making all of these materials that we're providing here today, and that I'll circle back around with, is a good way to sit back and think through, how do you want to, there's plenty of materials here. Who's your audience, and how do you want to address those questions to get out ahead of, questions like that are so broad. I mean, you could focus on just the chemicals themselves, and how, there's 14 to 16,000 chemicals that are being used in plastics, which is why they are not recyclable, and they're leaching into our food. We're being exposed to, you could go down so many different roads. So I think it depends on your audience, and I hope that these materials help you, and join the network, and we can have long conversations about these things, and strategize the work that you're doing. All right, Renga, really quick, because I just would feel bad with your hand raised. Thank you for your patience. Yep, I can't hear you. That's weird. You're not muted. Nope. Maybe it's your headset. Why don't we come back around? Can you sort that out? Because it's 2:30 and I want to get Suzette on. Renga, I can't hear you. Sorry. Can anyone else hear? No. See if you can suss that out. We'll get you on the next round.
Can he type in his question?
I think Renga did. I think I saw something come in. It's a little hard for me to do chat and be present with you, so I'm being present. I'll take a look at those.
Yeah, I don't see a question in the chat
I
from
think it came to
Brenda.
me personally.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to introduce you to, personally, one of my favorite people. I feel so lucky to work with Suzette Munley, who's just excellent and a visionary as well as fun. Suzette is Beyond Plastic's National Community Engagement Director. And Suzette, I'm going to pull up your slide deck, and I'd love for you to walk through how folks can ground all the things we learned today into our network. So take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. And it's so nice to be here with all of you today. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to really kind of share a little bit of my journey before I joined Beyond Plastic staff. So going to kind of walk you through and provide an example of one way that you can get involved. So I really started with, I was a part of Philadelphia's Southeast PA chapter of the Climate Reality Project. And I worked to have them, that organization, become an affiliate of Beyond Plastics. And my goal was to get a local law passed that would ban single-use plastic bags, polystyrene, and make straws available upon request. So it was during a climate reality chapter meeting, and I was introducing our new affiliation with Beyond Plastics. And there was an attendee who reached out to me during the meeting and connected me with members of Reduce Plastics PA, which is a coalition of Environmental Advisory Council members, or EAC members, from over 30 townships in my county that were working to reduce plastic waste through local legislation. So this was back in 2022. So I joined forces with the coalition, and I worked with them to bridge the relationship between my township's EAC and the coalition. And it was really an amazing relationship, but also it was a huge bonus that they maintained a shared resource hub. They had frequently asked questions, they had sample ordinances, they had surveys they already created, they were tracking the progress of many of the townships in the county. So there really was no need to reinvent the wheel. And although in the past, my township's Environmental Advisory Council had previously struggled to pass a plastic bag ban, I had just completed Judith's plastic pollution course at Bennington, and I had trained with the Beyond Plastics Volunteer Speakers Bureau. So I was really excited and inspired to take action. So then with my EAC, we were able to revitalize our local efforts, and we re-engaged our commissioners on plastic reduction. So my township's EAC members, they already knew kind of the most important pressure point for passing the ban, and that was the town board of commissioners, and they knew who was in support of the ban and they knew who was opposed. So on Earth Day, we created some pressure by assembling a table on plastic pollution at the local fair, and then we invited state and federal representatives to attend. So here, just an example of two display items. So on the left, you can see plastic pollution that was gathered along a 1 mile section of a trail along a local creek. And on the right, we created a QR code that had a pre-formatted email to the township manager. So when you scan the QR code, it populated a few sentences supporting reducing plastic pollution in the township and supporting a plastic bag ban. So the emails made a huge difference during the hearing with our commissioners that the township manager had heard from so many people supporting the ban. And it was super quick and easy. It took like 2 seconds when people visited our table at the Earth Day Fair. And then we were fortunate to have our state senator, Maria Collette, and Congresswoman Madeline Dean attend the fair, and they supported the ban. And then despite the advice to avoid engaging with a commissioner who opposed the plastic bag ban, I thought he was precisely the person that I should speak to. So I initiated a conversation with him, and he agreed to grant me 10 minutes at the next board meeting to present the case against single-use plastics. So this really allowed me to directly address concerns that they had and then advocate for meaningful change. So in May of 2023, I presented a PowerPoint to our Board of Commissioners advocating for a single-use plastic bag ban, and we successfully passed it in July. So I just want to be clear that when I started, I was completely unfamiliar with township governance. I didn't know what an EAC was, or if my township even had one. And I also didn't know whether my passion and interest would really be of any value, or whether it would yield any tangible results. So my Environmental Advisory Council had previously laid the groundwork for the legislation, but they really started to feel disheartened by their lack of progress. So by partnering with them and then leveraging resources from Beyond Plastics and the coalition, things like toolkits and people's experiences, getting some strategic guidance. It really helped reignite the initiative, and then I saw it through to completion. So I'm just going to connect all the dots really quick. My advocacy journey began by affiliating an organization with Beyond Plastics that I was already a part of. So that affiliation opened doors to a network of individuals passionate about combating plastic pollution. Then I became a volunteer speaker for Beyond Plastics, and I connected with the Reduce Plastics PA Coalition and Penn Environment, both organizations dedicated to passing single-use plastic bag bans in PA. So the point here is find people who are already organizing around the issue. As of now, 40 municipalities in Pennsylvania have passed bans, so about 20% of our population are covered by bans. Then in early 2025, I began leading the Plastic and Waste Reduction Group for the Southeast PA Sierra Club. And really the goal there was to unite volunteers and supporters so that we could drive coordinated efforts. So pulling the efforts of all these groups together so we could pass local legislation. So really the intent here is to illustrate how joining the network can empower all of you to build strong coalitions and drive impactful action in your community. And now I'm leading our local groups and affiliates program for Beyond Plastics, so you never know where this journey will take you. So you might be sitting there saying, like, how do I start to take action? So I'd like to introduce you to the Beyond Plastics Network. So our network emphasizes the power of connection across 5 volunteer groups. So this is a framework that's grounded in collaboration, where information, strategy, and energy flows freely between all groups. So here's what the network looks like. Our 5 volunteer groups include local groups, affiliates, advocates and organizers, community partners, and the Speakers Bureau. So this is designed as an on-ramp to action, making it easy for you to get involved in the ways that match your interest, your skills, and your capacity. So you can move across roles. For example, you might start as a speaker or an advocate, and then if you're ready to take on more, grow into a local group leader or policy organizer. So I'm going to touch on each one. So we'll start with local groups and affiliates, which I manage as the National Community Engagement Director. We have 40 local groups across the country, and every group is identified by their town or city. So Beyond Plastics local group is you and at least 2 people who want to end plastic pollution where you live. Excuse me. You can work with your friends, neighbors, or colleagues, and then we can also help you with outreach to find members to join your group. You'll receive training and support on how to be effective, strategic advocates for change. You'll stay connected with our anti-plastic pollution activists nationwide. And then we offer a lot of helpful resources like a Zoom account. We have a lot of toolkits available, so there's really no need to reinvent the wheel. I think Rebecca mentioned earlier, we facilitate monthly meetings so you can increase your reach in your network, and we have ongoing educational opportunities. So I'd love to show this slide. This is Eileen Ryan, who leads our local group, Beyond Plastics Greater Boston. She's a total rock star. This is a great visual of somebody that really has tabling down and perfected. She's tabling here at a theater in 2025. And then to make it official, one person forming a local group needs to complete our Grassroots training, which you're all about to do. And then you need to agree with our purpose, our principles and core messages, as well as our policy positions. Then you fill out this form on our website, and then we'll schedule some time to meet and we'll talk through next steps. We have 152 affiliates. So on the right, you see some of the logos of our affiliates across the country. An affiliate group is an existing organization that you are a part of that's aligned with our goal of ending plastic pollution, and they're ready and able to make it a priority You may have other priorities and campaigns as well. You remain independent and self-directed, and you agree with our purpose, principles, and core messages, as well as our policy positions. So if you lead a nonprofit group working on plastics, or say you just want to start a plastic reduction committee within your organization, you can simply fill out this form on our website to affiliate. Taking our grassroots training is not required to affiliate, but I'm so glad everyone here has done so today. And then once you fill out the form, I'll reply with your logos, we'll put you on our map, and then we'll plug you into all of our resources. So I do want to make a quick note that we really support and applaud businesses that are taking the lead to reduce plastics, but we're bound to keep our affiliates limited to nonprofit organizations. So if you're the proprietor of a business and you want to do this work, we highly recommend joining Upstream's Reuse Solutions Network. They provide resources and connections for reuse companies across the US. And then a third way to join the network is as an independent advocate or organizer. So these are individuals who are not part of a formal local group or affiliate, and they have a meaningful place within our network. So they also have access to tools and training and support to amplify their efforts. This pathway also serves as a way to grow our movement by inviting others to take action in their own communities. So the photo you're looking at here are advocates and organizers that are working hard to get the Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act passed in New York State. That's our EPR bill, and they are really key to building the movement. Next, volunteer speakers play a key role in educating the public, policymakers, and organizations about the harms of plastic pollution and the need for systemic change. So our speakers are equipped with up-to-date, peer-reviewed materials so they can confidently present on plastic pollution and counter industry misinformation. So speakers share resources, they provide encouragement and collaborate to improve their outreach or presentation skills. So I think this is a fantastic way to join the network if you love presenting, meeting new people, or sharing your knowledge, or if you want to build confidence speaking with your local elected officials about plastic pollution. So as I mentioned earlier, this is how I got started, and it really helped me when I presented to my board of commissioners to pass our bag ban. And then I was able to help others as part of the coalition pass bans across 4 counties. So currently there are 24 volunteer speakers. Rebecca leads this amazing program. So please help her reach her goal in 2026 to get to 100 plus speakers, and we will drop a link in the chat where you can express your interest. Lastly, our community partners are organizations that are working on, supporting, or exploring ways to reduce plastic pollution in their communities. So with our community partners, it's really about building reciprocal, long-term relationships that are grounded in shared purpose so that when opportunities arise, we can mobilize together effectively. So here we identify how our work intersects. So it might be water, air, soil, or other environmental issues, and then finding those connection points where we can collaborate and strengthen each other's efforts. So many of our partners work on a wide range of issues in addition to plastics, and those intersections are often where the most impactful partnerships emerge. So community partners collaborate with us on shared goals and projects without formally affiliating. And I think we've mentioned the network offers monthly meetings for everyone in our network. A great way to get started is just to show up to our next monthly meeting, which is Wednesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. They are always held on the second Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And every month you'll need to register for the meeting, and we'll drop that in the chat as well. And then I want to invite all of you to our next webinar on May 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's about the film, The Plastic Detox, which Judith mentioned when she said hello earlier. So the film features 6 couples with unexplained infertility who reduce their plastic exposure to improve their chances of conceiving. So you can find it on Netflix. And then we are encouraging everyone in our network to host film screenings. It's a great way to build your local work and then find people interested in doing this work with you. We have a fantastic toolkit and guide to assist with planning, and I will drop that in the chat as well. So if you have questions at all about the network, please reach out to me, and I look forward to talking with many of you. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Suzette. Great. Let's get back to questions. And Suzette, do you want to drop those links in the chat? We can do that. Certainly we'll be sharing them with all of our other materials. I know it's a ton of info here. But let me look at the chat to see what we've got here. So I am a member of the Zonta Club. Woot woot. Great. Hi, Kathy. That's a wonderful group. And I think you and I are working on something together through the speakers. I'm really glad you came. Zonta is an international organization. So at the district level, we have a climate justice think tank, and we address a topic once a month. On April 9th, right, this is it. We will host Rashna Shah, our volunteer from Beyond Plastics, to speak to us about people over plastic. If anyone would like to join us via Zoom, please contact Kathy leaves her email address to be in touch. And this is a direct message. So do you mind if I share with everybody, Kathy? I just read it. I didn't realize it was just for me. Why not? I just did it again. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to see you and great to work with you. Let's keep working together. Renga.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think there was a problem with my headset, so that's why you couldn't hear me the last time.
Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. So firstly, we talk a lot about single-use plastics, and the most visible examples are plastic bottles, plastic bags, and so on. But there are so many things which fly under the radar, which generate huge amounts of waste, such as the multi-layer films used to package, chips and cookies and, all kinds of food items, which have like an inner layer of foil and an outer layer of plastic, for example. And obviously that's not recyclable. And that's everywhere. And they even use it for non-food items like refill packs of soaps and other things. Clamshells is another good example. And then film used to wrap various things, like you said, pointless plastic. That's a great example. So you have a durable item comes in a box, and inside the box, the item is shrink wrapped again in plastic, which is really pointless. So what about all these under the radar single-use plastic? Is there something being done to address those?
So I mean, it's just there's a lot to say. I think that I'm looking at all of this from the local lens, right? And
Right.
when you're asking questions like that, my mind goes to, because obviously this is difficult to address when we think about the US, or we just think about industry, small businesses even that are making something and packaging it to sell it. It's a whole ecosystem, a cultural shift that needs to occur.
Right.
And so, one of the things that I know is happening around in my area is that farmers markets a lot of the farms are putting things in bags or clamshells or wrapping things in plastic wraps. Unless you plan ahead and bring your glass containers with you or whatever you have to be able to take home those goods, that's what's available. And there are efforts going on right now to support through our county to support or to pass laws that would ban some of these things little by little. And on the flip side, to enforce them, which is challenging, and then to be able to provide alternatives. So I don't know where you are.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, so in fact, Suzette just posted, which is my follow-up question, which is EPR is the ideal way to address this. And I don't know whether EPR takes all of this into account. How do they track? I mean, because there's literally millions of different types of single-use plastic. Do they track all of them, or how do they do that? Because yeah, it's one thing to talk to banning plastic bottles or getting the plastic bottles to be manufacturers to toe the line for EPR, but this item which comes in a shrink wrapped inside another item and all that. So what about all those types? And then, those clamshells, which are like you buy a battery pack and the battery pack comes in a clamshell, right?
Right.
So,
Yep. So the EPR, for those who don't know, it's Extended Producer Responsibility is the acronym EPR. And Suzette just put Beyond Plastics page on EPR that you can look at. But I wonder, Suzette, if you have a response to Renga. I saw you smile.
Yeah, I would say that the overarching goal of the EPR bill is to reduce single-use packaging over time. And so the second link I put in there is kind of a 10 requirements for effective packaging policy. So you can kind of see the high-level points. So to your point, Renga, it's not so much, at least my understanding, it's not so much about tracking all those individual layers. It's about forcing people that make the packaging and use it to reduce it significantly over time so that there's an overall reduction in packaging, which ultimately kind of gets at some of your points. But it's also about removing toxic chemicals from packaging, especially packaging that touches food. And then there are pieces in there about taking some of the funding that's created to help with the recycling efforts, which in an EPR bill, the producer of it has to be responsible for it through the entire life cycle of that packaging. So they would have to take care of it on the back end as well. So I'm not sure if that answers all of your question, but
right. And
most
I'm certainly, yeah, certainly that Amara, that and the big offenders like the Coca-Colas and
right.
Nestle's of the world are clearing in the targets for the EPR bills. And they're already participating in many ways. But how about the energizers of the world who send their batteries in clamshell packs? Or like I just got a replacement GE filter, which comes in one of those hard to open clamshells as well. So GE is typically not thought of as a plastics vendor or plastics provider, but here they are shipping their filters like that. So, I mean, that's what I mentioned. There's so many millions of manufacturers who are doing this. Is the EPR bill going to go after all of them or only after the big names?
Well, everyone would have to be bound by it depending where it's passed. I mean, I think you bring up the perfect example of why we need legislation passed, why this isn't about individual efforts getting 10 or 15 items of plastic out
Exactly.
of their home.
Exactly.
The only way people will make the change is if they're forced to by law. So that's why we always come back to legislation, starting on a local level, building to the state level. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and
that's
I think it's we talk about individual choices. Yes, certainly I can bring my reusable bag and so on, individual choices. But hey, I want a battery pack. I don't have a choice. There's
Right.
no reusable container I can bring to get the batteries, that kind of
so
thing.
so we went, if we go back, and then we should take more questions because we're getting close as we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, sorry, yeah.
No, 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 please don't be sorry. It's wonderful, wonderful contribution, Renga. Thank you. We talked about that earlier when we looked at our theory of change, right? When we talk about it is important for us to do what we can individually, and it has a lot of meaning, but what we're trying to do here is to build the movement to pass law.
Right. Okay.
And it can be, and I think for people who are dealing with, we're all looking, plastics are coming through our homes all of the time, or we can't get away from it in the ways that you're describing. Um, the reason why we're talking about local here in our grassroots organizing, understanding that it's getting to the larger, passing laws statewide working on the state level is the goal, is because people starting off, we need people to take the first steps, initial steps in their communities. There's no way around that. And sometimes when things seem too big, it will encourage people to be
True,
paralyzed.
true. Yeah,
And our
yeah.
goal is to say, no, no, no. Let's take this one bite step at a time. We can do this together. It's great that we have this national movement together. We can do this. And we need everybody to stay with us and to engage, enter in, play whatever role you can play in order to get to those heavy lifts that you're describing. Um, so thank you so much for that. I also
Sure.
think it's a moment to share this as well. This is a new F, work that we've done. Our California advocate has really put together, which is important for you all to recognize that this sort of recycling by mail is a complete farce. It is greenwashing. It is companies profiting on a really bad what ails us. So this is a really good, helpful write up on these current companies like Ridwell and et cetera that are wanting you to spend money to take your potato chip bags and recycle them, which is not what's happening. Daniel, I'm going to come to you in a sec. I'm just going to get to, I want you to pronounce your name. Is that Sarai? I'll ask you to
My
unmute.
name is Sarai, and uh, once,
Oop.
can you hear now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you tapped on that. Just you mentioned in the last grassroots
Oh, you're
participated in, like um, get rid of TerraCycle. They don't really work, and I just wanted to ask why that is a ton thing.
yeah.
And then
I think what you're asking is why doesn't it work? You're breaking up a little bit. Is that the question? So, so recycling anything that has colors, chemicals, what have you, it's not possible to recycle it, right? It's not glass or paper or tin. And so potato chip bags and what have you, you can read this, and we've outlined all of the reasons why. I'm spitballing. But when you have something that has, 14,000 chemicals in it, it's not possible to recycle that. It's not right, Suzette? How would you say that even better than I'm saying it?
Tell me the question again, real quick, Rebecca. I was caught up in the chat.
You can't recycle something that has multiple chemicals in it.
Yeah, so there's 16,000 chemicals in plastic, but there's also different polymers and there's different additives. You can't mix colors, different polymers, and different chemicals all together and recycle them. They were never intended to be recycled together. That's one of the reasons, besides the fact that there's no market really for recycled plastic because virgin plastic is so cheap, is why the recycling rate in the United States is less than 6%.
Thank you. Daniel, we'll wrap up.
thank you for explaining.
Yep. Daniel, do you have a final question?
No, just again, agreement, both on the point that policy is going to be the only big thing that changes this. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be building community as we work our way up. And yeah, the polymers aren't going to work together. Like the stuff that's in the green plastic that makes it really slippery messes and interacts with the stuff that's in the black plastic to make it UV resistant. And you get something that no machine can actually handle.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's why I think it's a great, it's good. I spent the weekend at a family member's home, and it's really painful uh when you really have to do what's right in a home, and throwing out plastics because they are not, you can't recycle them. That wishful recycle thing is true to more materials than folks realize. And so it's, you know, getting our homes and being mindful of what we consume while we're working on the larger lifts of legislation, locally and otherwise, is important. And having our network is a place where we can all come together and, you know, support one another in all of this work. I'm really grateful we have that call. The next one is on April the 8th, which is next Wednesday. They're at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in order to do our best to accommodate folks in different time zones across the country. And we hope you'll join us. And I'm just going to close. And what a lovely group today. Thank you so much for being here. I can see we have lots of expertise in the room, and we appreciate that. Pardon me while I try to pull this up. All right. So we're going to end here by encouraging you to, and this is pre-order, that needs to change. The book is out. And you're welcome to purchase the book at a local bookstore, online with a one of the chains here that are not causing harm. And or you can order it at the library, as some of you are doing. I think it's good to have your own copy because you can mark it up. It's really meant to put in your purse or whatever and take with you wherever you go, to help you to communicate the problems with plastic. And as Judith said before, these are all free trainings, but if you would like to join us and make a donation of any size, it's not required at all, but we remind folks as we build out our base to please support our work if you're able. And otherwise, we'll stop sharing and we hope to see you on Wednesday of next week. And thank you all for coming, and I'll be following up with all these materials. And if you have any follow-up questions, we welcome those. So have a wonderful weekend. Take good care of yourselves and those around you. And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rebecca and
everybody.
Suzette. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.